I swear I can still smell him in that room. The faint scent of his cologne, the one he always wore before going out. It's still there, mixed with something I can't quite place. Something rotten, something wrong. My name is Laura Evans, and my son Ethan has been missing for 14 days. 14 endless nights of staring at my phone, hoping for a message. 14 mornings waking up to silence instead of his usual, "Morning, Mom." The police told me not to lose hope. But when a small town like Mill Creek stops talking about your missing child, you know the story's already gone cold. Ethan was only 24, living on his own just a few miles away. He'd moved out last year after getting a job at his uncle's auto shop. I was proud of him, proud and worried, like any mother would be. He was my only son after all. His uncle, David Evans, was the kind of man people either loved or feared. He had that rough, commanding presence that you listen when I talk kind. To me, he was my late husband's brother, a man who stepped in when Ethan needed direction. But lately I'd started to feel something off about him. 2 days before Ethan vanished, we had dinner together, the three of us. I remember how tense the air was that night. Ethan barely spoke. David kept checking his phone, and I just sat there pretending not to notice how Ethan's hands trembled when his uncle looked his way. When I asked if everything was okay, Ethan smiled, that fake smile that hides fear. "Just tired, Mom," he said. But that night he called me again, whispering, "Mom, if anything happens, don't trust Uncle David." And then he hung up. I didn't sleep after that. The police searched his house, his car, his phone records, nothing. No signs of struggle. No sign of Ethan. They said maybe he ran away, but a mother knows. Ethan wouldn't leave without telling me. So today, for the first time in 2 weeks, I went to his house myself. The key was still on my ring. I stood on his porch for a long time before unlocking the door. The silence hit me like a wall. His shoes were by the door, his jacket on the hook like he'd just stepped out for a minute and never came back. The air inside was heavy. Dust had started to settle, and the lights flickered weakly when I turned them on. His bedroom door was slightly open. That's when I heard it. A soft creak. Coming from inside, I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Slowly, I pushed the door open. The curtains were drawn, casting long shadows across the bed. Everything looked normal until I noticed the blanket. It moved, just slightly. I told myself it was a mouse, or maybe the air vent, anything but what my imagination was screaming. Still, I stepped closer. "Ethan," my voice cracked silence. I knelt down and lifted the edge of the blanket. Nothing. The bed was neatly made. But then I noticed something underneath, a small, dark stain near the floorboards. My fingers brushed against it. Sticky, blood. I stumbled back, my heart racing. I pulled out my phone, fumbling to turn on the flashlight. That's when I saw the scratches on the wooden floor, like something, or someone, had been dragged. The trail led to the bed frame. I swallowed hard and got on my knees. My hands were shaking as I lifted the bed skirt. There was a smell, a sour, metallic stench that made me gag, and something else, something that looked like cloth. I reached for it. It was a shirt, Ethan's shirt, torn, and next to it, a small black box. I hesitated, but curiosity won. I opened it. Inside was a flash drive and a folded note with one word scrawled in Ethan's handwriting. "Mom." That's when I heard footsteps. Heavy, slow, coming from the hallway. "Laura." A deep voice called. It was David. I froze, clutching the note in my hand. He shouldn't have known I was here. I hadn't told anyone. I quickly shoved the flash drive and note into my coat pocket before standing up. My voice trembled. "David, what are you doing here?" He stepped into the doorway, smiling that unsettling half-smile of his. "Just checking on you. Heard you were coming by." His eyes drifted to the bed, then back to me. "Find anything interesting?" My stomach twisted. I forced a smile. "Just dust." He chuckled softly. "Good. Don't go looking for things you don't want to find." And just like that, he walked past me into the living room, calm, confident, like he owned the place. But I could feel it, the unease crawling up my spine. Something told me Ethan hadn't just disappeared. Something told me David knew exactly where he was. The night after I found Ethan's flash drive, I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that word again, Mom, written in his hurried, messy handwriting. It wasn't just a note, it was a message, a cry for help. But the part that kept replaying in my head was David's voice, smooth, calm, almost rehearsed. Don't go looking for things you don't want to find. That wasn't something a caring uncle said. That was a warning. Still, I couldn't accuse him, not yet, not without proof, so I did what any mother would do. I started digging. The next morning, I went to Mill Creek Auto Repairs, the shop David owned. The building sat on the edge of town, near the old railroad tracks. A quiet, lonely stretch of road most people avoided after dark. The sound of clanging metal filled the air as I walked in. A few workers nodded politely, but most avoided eye contact. I noticed one young man, maybe 19, sneaking glances at me, nervous. "Can I help you, Mrs. Evans?" David's voice came from behind me. He wiped his hands on a rag, smiling like we hadn't seen each other in years. "I just wanted to see if there's been any news about Ethan," I said carefully. He shrugged, still nothing. "Police came by again this morning, asking the same questions." I studied his face. No sadness, no worry, just that same fake calm. He loved working here. I said, glancing around, "He talked about you a lot." David smirked. "Yeah, the kid had potential. Needed a bit more discipline, though. Didn't always follow the rules." Something about his tone made my skin crawl. "What do you mean?" I asked. He tossed the rag aside. "You know how kids are. Think they know everything." I had to set him straight a few times. "Set him straight?" I repeated, trying to keep my voice even. He leaned closer. "You're overthinking it, Laura." He was like a son to me. That's when I noticed the bruise on his forearm. Faint, yellowing, like someone had grabbed him hard. I wanted to ask about it, but something told me not to. Instead, I nodded and left. That evening, I finally gathered the courage to plug in the flash drive. My hands trembled as my laptop loaded the files. There were 3 folders: bills and expenses, messages, video. The first folder looked harmless, scanned receipts, invoices from the shop, and a few bank statements. But as I scrolled through them, one thing stood out. Ethan's name kept appearing beside large withdrawals. $2.00, €0 here, $3.5 there, every payment labeled equipment cost. Except Ethan didn't own the business. David did. When I opened the messages folder, there were screenshots of text conversations. Most were between Ethan and David. "Ethan, Uncle, this isn't right. The money's not going to the suppliers. David, you don't know what you're talking about. Stay in your lane, Ethan. If the police find out, David, watch your mouth, boy, your family. Don't forget who gave you that job." My heart pounded as I read the last message, time-stamped 2 days before Ethan disappeared. "Ethan, I'm done being quiet about this." The next morning, I went to the police with the flash drive. Officer Danvers, the lead investigator, listened quietly as I explained. He scrolled through the files, his expression unreadable. "This is interesting," he said finally, "but we can't jump to conclusions. There's no proof these messages weren't fabricated." Fabricated? I snapped. "You think I'd make this up?" He raised his hands. "I'm just saying, we'll need to verify it. David Evans is a respected man in this town. His shop's been clean for years, of course." David always knew how to look innocent, how to charm people. He was the kind of man who shook your hand too firmly and smiled too wide. "Just keep me updated," I said, swallowing my frustration. He nodded, but I could tell from his eyes that the flash drive would end up in a drawer somewhere, forgotten. That night, I sat in Ethan's room again. I couldn't stay away. The silence there felt sacred, like he was still around somehow. As I looked around, I noticed something odd about the picture frame on his desk. The photo inside was of him and David at the shop's opening day, both smiling, arms around each other. But behind the photo, tucked into the corner of the frame, was a folded piece of paper. It was a loan agreement signed by David, showing that Ethan had lent him $10,000 just 3 months ago. The signature at the bottom, David's, looked hurried, uneven. I suddenly remembered the night Ethan came over to borrow money from me. He said it was for a project at work. He'd promised to pay me back soon. I didn't question it, I trusted him. But now it all made sense. David was bleeding him dry. 2 days later, I went back to the shop unannounced. The workers froze when I entered. I caught snippets of whispers before they stopped talking altogether. In the back office, I found David arguing on the phone. His voice was sharp, angry. "I told you I'll get it done," he hissed. "Just don't call here again." When he saw me, he hung up instantly. "Laura, you can't just walk in here like that." "I needed to talk," I said, trying to sound calm. "About Ethan." He sighed, rubbing his temples. "You need to let this go. The police will handle it." "Handle it? They've done nothing." "Then maybe that's because there's nothing to find." He snapped. His tone was different now, cold, defensive. "Maybe Ethan got himself into something you don't want to know about." "What are you talking about?" He leaned back in his chair. "He was stealing from the business. I didn't want to tell you, didn't want to break your heart." My chest tightened. "That's a lie. Believe what you want," he said, standing up, "but stop asking questions for your own good." I left before he could see my tears. That night, I got a call from the young mechanic I'd seen earlier, the nervous one. His name was Tyler. "Mrs. Evans," he whispered. "I can't talk long, but Ethan didn't steal anything. He found out something he wasn't supposed to. Mr. Evans made him stay late that last night. I heard them arguing." "About what?" I asked. "Money and something about deliveries." "Deliveries?" He hesitated. "Not car parts, something else." Before I could ask more, the line went dead. By the time I hung up, my hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. I didn't know what deliveries meant, but I knew it wasn't good. David was lying about everything, and yet there was something about the way Tyler spoke, like he was scared for his life, like he knew what had really happened to my son. I looked down at Ethan's flash drive again, still plugged into my laptop. There was one folder I hadn't opened yet, video. I double-clicked. The file name read Cam04 Security 1002. MP4, my heart raced. That was the night Ethan disappeared. As the video began to play, the image flickered, grainy security footage from the shop's garage. Ethan was there, pacing, looking anxious. Then another figure entered, David. They argued for nearly a minute, words silent but movements clear. And then David reached into his pocket. The screen froze, error, file corrupted. I sat there staring, my breath shallow, the room spinning around me. That single frame, David's hand reaching for something, was burned into my mind. The betrayal wasn't proven yet, but I could feel it closing in. And for the first time since Ethan disappeared, I realized if I didn't act fast, I might be next. The corrupted video haunted me for days. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that frozen image again, David's hand slipping into his pocket, Ethan stepping back, fear etched across his face. I needed to see what came next. After 2 sleepless nights, I took the flash drive to Ethan's friend, Noah, a quiet tech, savvy kid who used to help Ethan with his car modifications. His small apartment was cluttered with cables and computer parts, but he was brilliant, the kind of person who could bring dead files back to life. He plugged in the drive, frowning. This footage was deliberately corrupted. Someone used overwrite encryption. I stared. Meaning, he said, typing furiously. Someone didn't just delete it, they made sure no one could restore it easily. But, he smirked, they didn't count on me. For the next hour, I watched lines of code scroll down the screen as he worked. Then, suddenly, The image flickered back to life. The sound came first, muffled voices, distorted but audible. Then the picture cleared enough to see Ethan standing in the garage, arguing with David. "Ethan, you said this was temporary. I'm not keeping fake invoices anymore, Uncle." "David, lower your voice. You don't know what you're talking about." "Ethan, I know exactly what's going on. You're stealing from the business, and from Dad's trust fund." I gasped. "Trust fund?" David's voice rose, sharp and venomous. "David, that money should have been mine. Your father left everything to you, a kid who doesn't know how to run a business. You think I'll let that happen?" Ethan stepped back. "Ethan, you forged my signature. I found the documents. I'm going to the police." There was a pause, one long, terrifying silence, before David lunged forward. The video cut out right there. I sat frozen, staring at the screen, every nerve in my body on fire. David, my husband's brother, the man who helped raise my son. He had stolen from us, from his own family, and when Ethan found out, he'd silenced him. My hands were trembling so hard I could barely breathe. "Noah," I whispered, "can you recover the rest?" He shook his head slowly. "The rest is gone, overwritten completely." I grabbed the flash drive and stood up. "I need to go." He looked worried. "Mrs. Evans, don't confront him alone. Please, let the police handle it." But the police hadn't handled anything. They'd believed him, and now I had proof, at least part of it. I drove straight to David's house. The road seemed endless, every turn blurring with anger and disbelief. How could he do this? My husband, before he died, had trusted David to manage the family business until Ethan was ready. He'd always called him the brother I can rely on. And that same man had stolen his legacy, and possibly his son. By the time I reached David's driveway, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I could see his truck parked outside, engine still warm. He was home. I rang the bell. He opened the door, wearing that same smug grin. "Laura, twice in 1 week. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I held up the flash drive. "You know exactly why I'm here." His expression didn't change, but I saw the flicker in his eyes, a brief, sharp flash of panic. "Where did you get that?" he asked quietly. "From Ethan's room." I said. "He left it for me, along with the proof of what you did." David chuckled, a dry, cold sound. "Proof? You've always been dramatic. Let me guess, some ridiculous conspiracy theory. Stop lying." I snapped. "I saw the video, David. You forged the trust documents. You stole from your own nephew. And when he found out, you—" He slammed the door shut behind me before I could finish, his voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "Careful what you accuse people of, Laura." I stood my ground. "Where is he?" His jaw clenched. "You think I hurt him? I know you did something. You were the last one with him." He took a slow step toward me. "You should stop digging, for your own sake." I could smell the oil and metal on his clothes, the faint scent of gasoline, and something darker beneath it. "You killed him," I said softly. He smiled, but it wasn't a denial. It was the kind of smile that hides a truth too ugly to speak. And that's when I saw it, a small silver chain hanging from his pocket. Ethan's chain, the one I'd given him on his 18th birthday. My breath hitched. "That's his." David looked down, then tucked it back into his pocket. "Get out of my house, Laura." I stepped back, tears stinging my eyes. "You'll pay for this." He leaned closer, whispering, "Only if you can prove it." That night, I sat in my car outside the police station for an hour, unable to move. My heart wanted justice, but my mind was clouded by fear. What if David was right? What if no one believed me again? He had the money, the connections, the charm. I had nothing. Just a broken video and a mother's instinct. When I finally went inside, Officer Danvers looked up, surprised. "Mrs. Evans, I have evidence," I said, my voice shaking. "My brother-in-law forged financial documents and stole from my husband's trust fund. My son found out and now he's missing. he sighed. Laura, we've already talked to David Evans. He's cooperating fully. Without physical evidence linking him to your son's disappearance. I have evidence. I slammed the flash drive on his desk. Watch the video, it's all there. He inserted it into the computer. The file opened and then, to my horror, displayed only static. The video was gone. What? No, I shouted. It was here. You saw me plug it in. Danvers frowned. Mrs. Evans, maybe you're under a lot of stress. It's easy to misremember things. Misremember. I felt my voice break. He killed my son. He gave me that same pitying look everyone gave grieving mothers, the look that says we don't believe you, but we'll pretend we care. Go home, Mrs. Evans, he said gently. We'll call you if anything comes up. When I got home, I checked the flash drive again. Empty, every folder gone, and that's when I realized David had gotten to it. He must have followed me to Noah's place, or maybe hacked it remotely. Either way, my only proof was gone, but the betrayal wasn't just theft or lies. It was deeper than that. He had taken everything, my husband's business, my son's life, my peace of mind, and he still walked free. I sat in the dark, gripping Ethan's torn shirt from under his bed. The fabric smelled faintly of engine oil and metal, the same smell that clung to David. My tears burned as they fell. Grief was giving way to something else, something sharp, consuming, unstoppable. Rage, if the law wouldn't stop him, I would. I looked at the clock, midnight, then at the photo of Ethan smiling beside his father. I'm sorry, baby, I whispered. I let him near you, but I swear I won't let him get away with this. My phone buzzed then, a message from an unknown number. Stop digging, Laura, or you'll end up like him. The blood drained from my face. It wasn't over. It was just beginning. For days after the threat message, I barely left the house. The words burned into my mind. Stop digging, Laura, or you'll end up like him. Whoever sent it, I already knew. The tone was pure David, confident, controlled, like a man who believed he was untouchable. At first, I did what fear told me to do. I hid. I closed the curtains, ignored the phone, sat in Ethan's room for hours, holding his shirt, smelling what was left of him. Everywhere I looked, I saw reminders, his jacket draped over the chair, the unfinished sketch on his desk, the birthday card I'd written him 3 months before. To my son, my pride, my reason for everything. But grief was starting to change shape. It was no longer soft or helpless. It was heavy, sharp like metal, and one night when I couldn't stand the silence anymore, I heard something that would change everything. A faint click, the sound of a phone connecting. It was coming from Ethan's closet. I opened the door slowly. Inside, hanging behind his shirts, was a small black device taped near the corner. A voice recorder. My heart pounded as I pulled it free and pressed play. The first voice was Ethan's. Okay, it's recording. If anyone finds this, Mom, if you find this, just know I tried to fix it before it got worse. My knees nearly buckled. His voice was calm but tight with fear. Uncle David's been stealing from the trust. I found proof, invoices, fake contracts. He's been laundering money through the shop for years, and now he's talking about liquidating assets. That means selling everything Dad built. I confronted him today. He said if I talk to the police, I'll regret it. He's dangerous, Mom. Please be careful. If anything happens to me, you'll know who did it. The recording clicked off, and just like that, my tears stopped. I sat there in silence, staring at the recorder, my heart steadying. My son, my boy, had faced a monster and refused to back down. He'd been brave when I hadn't, and suddenly I knew I couldn't be the grieving mother anymore. David had taken enough. My fear had only fed his power. If Ethan could stand up to him, so could I. The next morning I started planning. I dug through every folder, every drawer in Ethan's house, searching for more. I found fragments, burned papers in the fireplace, shredded documents in the bin. Someone had tried to destroy evidence. But one corner of an envelope caught my eye, an old bank seal. It wasn't from Mill Creek Savings, the bank we used. It was from Harper and Cole Financial, a private investment firm. That's where the trust fund was. I drove there the same afternoon. The receptionist looked confused when I gave my name, Laura Evans. Oh yes, the account manager asked for you a few months ago. I'm surprised you're back. Back? I frowned. I haven't been here in years, she blinked, but you authorized Mr. David Evans to make a transfer in June. My chest tightened. No, I didn't. She turned pale. Oh God. He had the documents with your signature. Forgery. Again. Can you print them? I asked. I shouldn't. I leaned in. My son's missing. Please. Her eyes softened. A few minutes later, she slid the papers across the counter. My fake signature stared back at me. That was the trigger moment. The moment everything clicked. David hadn't just stolen from my husband's trust. He'd erased Ethan's future, my future, and done it with my forged consent. He'd planned this for years, and he'd killed my son to keep it quiet. But now I had proof. When I got home, I scanned every page and saved it in multiple locations. My laptop, an external drive, even my email drafts. I wasn't going to lose evidence again. Then I called Noah. I'm in, he said instantly. What do you need me to do? I need everything you can find on David's financials. Bank accounts, company records, anything. He hesitated. You're planning something. Yes. A pause, then softly, good. That night I couldn't sleep again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was adrenaline. I stood by the window, looking out at the quiet street. Mill Creek looked peaceful, but I knew better now. Evil doesn't always wear a mask. Sometimes it wears a smile and a family name. I opened my phone and scrolled to David's number. For a long time I just stared at it. Then I pressed record on the voice memo app. David, I said softly, my voice steady. You think I'm weak. You think because I'm grieving I won't fight back. But you made one mistake, you left me alive, and now I know everything. I ended the recording and saved it. This wasn't for him. It was for me, a promise. The next day, I went to the auto shop again. This time, I wasn't there to ask questions. When I walked in, the workers froze. The air was heavy with the smell of grease and fear. David wasn't in sight, but I could hear his voice in the back office. I marched straight to the door and pushed it open. He was sitting at his desk, counting stacks of cash. He looked up, startled. Laura, you really don't know when to quit, do you? I've seen the bank documents, I said. You forged my signature, you drained Ethan's trust. His smile faltered for half a second before returning. You don't have proof. I do now, I said quietly, and I've already sent copies to multiple people. So if anything happens to me, everyone will know exactly who did it. His jaw tightened. For the first time, I saw fear flicker behind his eyes. You shouldn't have done that, he said. No. I replied, taking a step closer. You shouldn't have done any of this. I leaned in, my voice low. You killed your own nephew for money, and I will make sure you burn for it. For a long moment, we just stood there, predator and prey, but not in the way he thought anymore. Finally, he chuckled, but it was forced. Get out, Laura, before I lose my temper. I smiled coldly. Do it, the cameras are already rolling. He looked up sharply. I gestured toward the corner shelf, where a small blinking light pulsed from a phone I'd placed earlier. Smile for the truth, David. When I left, I drove straight to Noah's. I handed him the phone. Send the recording to every contact on his company's email list, I said. And make sure a copy goes to Officer Danvers, too. He whistled. You're declaring war. I nodded. He started it. Noah hesitated. What if he comes after you? He already has, I said, but this time I'm ready. That night, the fear that had haunted me for weeks began to fade. I could feel Ethan's strength in me, the quiet determination, the fire that wouldn't die. I went back into his room one last time. I sat on his bed, looking around at the life that was stolen from him. I'm not stopping, Ethan. I whispered. Not until he pays for what he did. The wind brushed against the window pane, a soft, hollow sound, almost like a sigh. And in that silence, something shifted inside me. I wasn't the broken mother anymore. I was the storm he'd never see coming. First rule I taught myself that week: proof survives where rage does not. Anger was a wildfire, useful for warming me, dangerous if it burned the only things that mattered. So I folded it, tamped it down, and made lists. My plan had to be surgical. No melodrama, no reckless confrontations. David's power came from the town's slumbering faith in him. My job was to wake people up with facts they couldn't ignore. I started by duplicating everything I had: copies of the forged Harper and Cole documents, the voice recorder clip, the shredded envelope corner, the corrupted video frame Noah could salvage, and the bank seal. I burned images onto 3 USB drives, uploaded encrypted copies to my email and to cloud storage under innocuous file names, and left printed sets with 2 people I trusted implicitly: Noah and Tyler, the young mechanic who'd whispered about deliveries. If anything happened to me, at least 2 outsiders would have the trail. I also bought a battered little recorder and a cheap phone, the kind you can hide in a glove compartment. No theatrics, just backups. If David had learned to delete and overwrite, I'd learned redundancy. Evidence alone wasn't enough in Mill Creek. You needed witnesses who could speak without trembling. Tyler was terrified, but he'd promised to help. He admitted what he'd seen: Ethan and David arguing the night Ethan disappeared, David making late night drop-offs that were never car parts. I coaxed a name out of him: a courier's company David used, registered under a shell company. It wasn't much, but it meant there were other hands involved, and those hands could be traced. Noah, with his network of freelance coders, dug into the shop's digital footprint. He found a pattern of transfers to offshore accounts tied to a shell business that shared a postal box with a scrap metal dealer 2 towns over. It was a tangle, but it was a tangle that could be pulled. I didn't want the town to rally behind me for the wrong reasons. A viral post or late night show would headline Mother's allegations and then fizzle. Instead, I sent anonymized copies of the bank documents and ledger snippets to 3 recipients at once: a lawyer in the next county with a reputation for taking on crooked businesses, an investigative reporter at the regional paper, and Officer Danvers this time, copied with a demand for an audit from Harper and Cole. Under each file, I placed a short sentence: verify this independently. I will provide more when I can. No immediate fireworks. That was expected. But then, a small advance. The reporter, Claire Morales, replied. This looks solid, meet me, bring the rest. Her tone carried the kind of sharp curiosity that loves a puzzle and hates liars. I scheduled the meeting for 2 days later, at a coffee shop across town where she wouldn't be followed. David had always enjoyed declaring himself untouchable. He was reckless in private and polished in public. That arrogance could be guided. I started feeding him breadcrumbs, public nudges that suggested I was closing in. A mention to the shop staff that I'd met with a city lawyer. A poorly disguised glance his way at a town council meeting, a quiet question left where he'd overhear it. Who signs for the midnight deliveries? He responded the way predators do, with more control, more shows of force, and increasingly carelessness in hidden things. This is where the plan threaded the needle. I needed David to reveal himself on camera, not by physical violence, but by voice and by the hand that had once reached into his pocket. I couldn't force a confession, but I could provoke slips and ties that a calm lawyer and a reporter could use. Noah rigged a small hidden camera in the back office of the shop, a legal gray area in real life, but in my story it was a last-ditch attempt to capture what the police refused to. The camera was aimed not where money sat, but where David signed papers and handled envelopes. We synced it to an external recorder and set it to upload footage to a secure account every night. I also put a second visible camera in the reception area. a gesture to make employees think records were being kept, and to catch anyone who would try to destroy evidence in the open. If David had collaborators, they were small men with fragile nerves. I visited them, the courier registered to the shell company, a middle manager who'd been paid quietly, a receptionist at Harper and Cole who'd handled transfers. I didn't beg for loyalty. I offered a path. I showed them copies of the ledger, and I told them the truth plainly. Either you help me put this together, or I take these documents to Claire and to the lawyer. If the police fail us, the public won't, but you'll be complicit. Fear, not guilt, is an effective persuader. So is the offer of immunity in exchange for testimony. Slowly, like unraveling stitches, they loosened. David was still the town's quiet storm. He could intimidate witnesses, bribe a clerk, or worse. I kept movement to a minimum, had Noah change the submission times of uploaded files so nothing sent from my house would look traceable to me, and spent nights at Tyler's small apartment. For good measure, I printed exact copies of the most damning documents and hid them in 3 places: the glove box of an old sedan, a locker at the swim club, and in the pocket of a coat I left at Claire's office. If something happened to me, at least the paper trail would live on. The plan culminated in a press packet: Claire, the lawyer, and the list of witnesses. We scheduled the press reading for a Friday morning when the paper publishes its weekend investigative section, and the small TV station runs a mid-morning segment. The lawyer promised subpoenas. Claire promised a headline that wouldn't read like a rumor. Still, none of that changed the fact that David felt in control. He kept smiling at town functions, kept greeting neighbors with the familiar firm handshake. He called my bluff twice by issuing a terse town-wide email that he'd cooperate fully with authorities, and warning anyone spreading false allegations that they would be prosecuted. The email read crisp and confident. That was both fuel and danger. It told me my plan had rattled him, or that he wanted everyone to know he was unshakable. The tension thickened the night before the release. I sat alone in Ethan's room, clutching a photo of his grin, listening to the hum of the refrigerator like a metronome to my pulse. Tyler had promised to be at the press conference to corroborate deliveries. The courier who'd folded under pressure had agreed to testify if a subpoena arrived. Noah had the back office footage queued for upload the minute Claire said go. And then my phone buzzed with a single text, anonymous, last chance. Walk away, no signature, no number. I stared at it until the glow bled into the darkness. The threat was the same hand as before, the warning voice that had whispered to be careful. But now, standing on the precipice, the warning was a challenge. The plan was set. The stakes were as high as they'd ever been. The town would wake on Friday either to a scandal or to simple, cruel silence. David still smiled for dinner parties. He still handled money. He still walked among us like a man without a past. Between us lay headlines, subpoenas, and the truth. Between us lay a room where a son had once laughed and would not come home. I placed Ethan's shirt back in the drawer, folded and neat. I didn't sleep that night, not because I feared the dark, but because I was finally awake. The call time was at dawn. The trap was laid. Now we only had to see if the net was strong enough to hold him. The coffee shop was full by the time Claire Morales arrived with a grim smile and a stack of legal-looking folders. Word had spread. The regional reporter's email had a way of waking the county. By 9 a.m., a TV van idled outside Mill Creek's courthouse, and people lined the sidewalk, mouths already forming theories. David, predictably, wore his Sunday best, a navy suit, iron shirt, the same tight, practiced grin that had fooled so many. I sat near the back, Ethan's recorder tucked into my purse like a talisman. Noah threaded his arm through mine, steady and unblinking. Tyler hovered by the door, all fidget and guilt. The lawyer I'd contacted sat at a table up front, his face a mask of competence. Claire took a breath and began. "This is an independent press briefing," she said, voice calm, camera ready. We have documents that indicate a pattern of fraud and embezzlement at Mill Creek Auto Repairs. Our sources include bank records, internal ledgers, and a recording made by a family member who feared for his life. The Evans family has been asked to comment. She didn't look at David. She looked at me. Mrs. Evans, would you like to read what your son left? My hands trembled as I handed the recorder to Claire. She pressed play. Ethan's voice filled the room, small, steady, the sound of someone who'd chosen courage over fear. Uncle David's been stealing from the trust. I found proof. If anything happens to me, Mom. The room sucked in air. Phones were already out recording. A camera in the back panned to David. His face didn't change at first. Then his jaw tightened. Claire placed copies of the forged Harper and Cole transfer documents on the table. The lawyer spoke next, crisp and direct. These signatures are forged, and these transfers were directed to accounts linked to shell companies associated with Mill Creek Auto Repairs. We have a chain of custody for these documents corroborated by independent bank seals and third-party verification. He looked at the cameras. We are formally requesting an audit of those accounts and asking the state attorney to review potential criminal charges. A murmur grew into a wave. People who trusted David for years exchanged looks. He tried to speak, to shape the moment back into his control. This is slander, he said, voice smooth. My family. But Claire cut him off with a glance. That's when the second act hit. Noah tapped his phone, and Claire connected a screen to the TV in the coffee shop. Grainy footage from the shop's back office flickered into view. David hunched over paperwork, a pen moving quickly, then a blurred frame that showed him reach into a folder and press something in an envelope. The angle didn't show a body, but it showed signatures, dates, and the way his hand hovered, the same hand that had been frozen in the corrupted clip. Where did you get this? David demanded, from a backup. Noah said quietly, a camera in the back office. He tapped another file, and the partial security frame from the night Ethan disappeared played. Ethan confronting David, David's shout, a shove, then David's hand in his pocket. The audio was broken, but the motion spoke a language no lawyer could spin. David's smile collapsed. He attempted a legal counterattack, threats of lawsuits, claims of fabrication, but then Tyler stepped forward. I saw them, Tyler said, voice shaking. I saw the deliveries, they weren't car parts. I saw Mr. Evans bring big crates late at night. He told us to keep quiet. His testimony was small, frightened, human. It landed like a stone. Then the clincher, an email notification on Claire's laptop. Harper and Cole had replied. They'd frozen the disputed accounts pending investigation. Their brief message read, we have placed temporary holds on the accounts in question and will cooperate fully with law enforcement. The message popped up live on the screen. You could hear the air change. Friends stepped back. Employees who had once laughed at David's jokes glared at him now with newly sharpened eyes. The shop owner, who'd once passed the hat for his successful uncle, looked like he might break. David tried to flee. He stood, stuttering through a practiced rage that looked to me like a man losing the final actors in his play. He turned toward the door, and then 2 uniformed officers from the State Investigation Unit stepped into the coffee shop. They moved fast, precise. Mr. David Evans, one of them asked. He tried to compose himself. On what grounds? You're under investigation for alleged fraud, embezzlement, and obstruction of justice. The officer said, calm but firm. We have a subpoena for your records and will be seizing assets as part of the inquiry. You'll need to accompany us. When they reached for him, David's face finally cracked. It wasn't a scream. It was a thin, incredulous gasp, the sound of a man whose map of the world had been erased. Outside, the TV vans began broadcasting live. The shop's name scrawled across the lower third of the screen as Claire gave a succinct rundown. People pointed, phones recorded. Within minutes, the town that had fed on David's charm now fed on his collapse. Men who had taken his money, now called him for explanations. The mayor issued a statement calling for a full, transparent investigation. Mill Creek's Sunday brunch crowd turned into a slow-moving courtroom. But even as David was led away in cuffs, something in my chest didn't unclench. The law could seize assets, freeze accounts, and drag a man before a judge, but it couldn't unsay the nights Ethan never came home. It couldn't bring back a laugh or a warm hand on my shoulder. It couldn't close the hollow. The legal machinery moved with the cold efficiency of consequence. Subpoenas were filed. The state prosecutor took the evidence and arranged for a preliminary hearing. Claire's article ran that afternoon with a headline that cut like a blade. Local businessman arrested after allegations of trust fraud. Missing sons recording triggers investigation. Comments flooded in shock, support, anger. Later that day, in a small, sterile room at the courthouse, David's lawyer pressed a stack of legal briefs toward me like a challenge. "This can be settled," he insisted. "Compensation can be arranged. Think of your reputation, Mrs. Evans." I looked at him, then at the parking lot where news vans idled like vultures. I thought of Ethan's recorder and the sound of his voice telling me to be brave. I felt the old, hot grief tighten and then cool into something decisive. "No settlement can tell me where he is," I said quietly. "No amount of money will bring my son back. This isn't about reputation. This is about truth." The lawyer's face registered a new understanding. Money might buy silence, but it could not erase a voice captured on a small black recorder or the avalanche of financial proof that had now been set in motion. He packed his papers with a neatness that betrayed unease. By nightfall, David's assets were frozen. Employees were being interviewed, and the shop, once a minor engine of local pride, had a yellow police tape fluttering across its door. People crossed the street to avoid looking. A few business owners removed his decals from their windows like they were brittle wounds. Back at my house, I sat in Ethan's room and let the truth wash over me. For the first time since he'd vanished, there was a public record that named the villain. There was a legal net cast wide enough to hold him. The town would see the documents and the recordings. The state would pursue the accounts. David would not walk the same streets again, at least not with blind faith as his shield. But as I folded Ethan's torn shirt and placed it beside the recorder, a hollow remained. We had won a battle, a huge, cinematic one, but the war for answers was not over. There were crates to trace, couriers to subpoena, nights to reconstruct. There were places David had sent things, and I had to find where my son had gone on the night he was taken. I went to sleep that night, with my phone buzzing with messages of support, and a long list of witnesses to call. The climax had come and the town had watched. David had been exposed, humiliated, legally undone. The storm had arrived. Now I had to follow where it left footprints. Rain fell the morning they sentenced David Evans. Mill Creek's courthouse, once a symbol of quiet civility, looked like something out of a storm-washed painting, the kind where justice finally finds its color. The streets outside overflowed with reporters, microphones glinting under umbrellas, the sound of murmuring townsfolk rising like static. I stood in the crowd, my black coat pulled tight, Ethan's silver chain wrapped around my wrist like a vow. Inside, the judge read through the list of crimes: embezzlement, fraud, forgery, obstruction of justice, tampering with evidence in an ongoing missing person case. Every word was a weight David could no longer dodge. When they called for victim statements, I rose, slow but steady. My voice didn't tremble this time. "Your Honor," I began. The man sitting there wasn't just a thief. He was family. My husband trusted him. My son admired him. He stole money, yes, but worse, he stole trust. He stole peace. He stole time I can't never get back. David sat expressionless, his eyes darting between the cameras and the polished floor. "I came here today not because I want revenge," I continued, "but because my son deserved better. His name deserves better. And I want everyone who's ever been silenced by someone they trusted to know. The truth does fight back. I turned to look at David. You thought you could bury Ethan's voice, but it was your own greed that dug the hole you're standing in now. For a moment, the courtroom went still. Then the judge spoke the words I'd waited months to hear. When the gavel struck, it was more than sound, it was release.
David was led away in cuffs, the same hand that once signed fake documents now trembling against the chain.
Outside, the cameras swarmed him. Every click of the shutter was another nail in the coffin of his reputation. By afternoon, every news station carried his story. Local business owner sentenced to 25 years for fraud and financial deception. New evidence links crimes to trust fund theft and cover-up. The business he'd stolen from my husband's legacy was seized by the state. The accounts he'd hidden in offshore names were liquidated to repay the victims, including me. But I didn't care about the money. What I wanted, I already had. His name stripped bare in front of the same people who once called him respectable. It was poetic, in a way, the man who'd built his life on appearances, undone by his own vanity. And through it all, Ethan's voice, that small, steady message, became the evidence that changed everything. In the weeks that followed, people treated me differently. Neighbors who once looked away now stopped by with flowers and soft apologies. The police who dismissed me called to thank me for persistence. Even Officer Danvers, once skeptical, visited in person. "You were right from the start," he said, standing awkwardly in my doorway. "If you hadn't kept pushing." I smiled faintly. "You just needed to listen to a mother's instinct." He nodded, eyes down. "We're still looking for him, for Ethan. We won't stop, I know," I said softly. "Neither will I." Ethan's disappearance was never fully closed, but traces began to surface. The crates David shipped. One was found abandoned near the old quarry, containing burnt papers and pieces of equipment. Forensic teams were still combing through them. Each clue, no matter how small, kept hope alive, not necessarily for recovery, but for truth. Because sometimes, justice doesn't mean bringing someone back. It means making sure no one forgets why they were lost. 3 months later, Harper & Cole invited me to sign papers officially restoring Ethan's name to the trust. They said his assets would go into a scholarship fund for apprentices, young mechanics who wanted to study engineering, just like he did. I named it the Ethan Evans Foundation. The first grant went to Tyler, the same boy who once trembled to speak the truth. "He cried when he found out. He taught me everything I know," he said. "I'll make him proud." I smiled. That's all he ever wanted. The night before the foundation's opening ceremony, I sat alone in Ethan's room one last time. The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that doesn't ache anymore, only hums like peace. His bed was neatly made, his tools cleaned, the small black recorder resting on his desk like a finished chapter. I pressed play again, not to grieve, but to remember. "Mom, if you find this, don't be scared. Just be strong." I closed my eyes and whispered, "I was, baby, I was." When I took the stage at the foundation launch, the entire town was there. The same faces that once whispered rumors now sat in front rows, listening. Claire Morales stood by the camera, smiling proudly. I began my speech not as a victim, but as a survivor. "Betrayal doesn't just come from strangers," I said. "It comes from the people you trust the most, the ones who know exactly where to cut deepest. But what they forget is this: trust can be rebuilt, truth can be louder, and love never dies." Quietly, I paused, glancing at Ethan's photo on the projector. That bright grin, the spark in his eyes. Ethan believed good people could fix broken things. He was right, he fixed me. And maybe, in telling our story, we can fix others too. The crowd rose to their feet. Some cried, some clapped. All felt the echo of justice. Later that evening, as I walked home under the orange wash of streetlights,
I stopped by the shuttered Mill Creek Auto Repairs, now boarded up. A for sale sign hanging crookedly. The windows reflected my face, older, stronger, unafraid. In the reflection, I could almost see Ethan beside me, hands in his pockets, grinning that familiar grin. "You did it, Mom," I imagined him saying. I whispered, "No, we did it." A soft wind stirred, and one of the boards creaked loose, slapping against the glass. A single paper fluttered out, a torn invoice, one of the many lies David had written. It landed in a puddle, ink bleeding, his signature dissolving into nothing. That, I thought, is what justice looks like, the truth washing away the lie that tried to bury it. If you've been betrayed by someone you trusted, a friend, a partner, a family member, I want you to remember this. You are not weak for hurting. You are strong for surviving. You are not broken by betrayal. You are rebuilt by it. Sometimes revenge isn't violence or rage. Sometimes it's standing tall when they expected you to stay on your knees. And when the truth finally rises, it doesn't whisper, it roars. So tell me in the comments, have you ever faced betrayal that changed you forever? How did you find your strength again? Back, hand index pointing down, share your story below. Maybe your words will help someone else fight their way back too. And if you believe justice, real justice is worth fighting for. Speech balloon comment truth wins. Thumbs up like the story. Bell subscribe for more real, powerful stories that remind us. Evil may hide in shadows, but truth always walks in light.